training.tv. My name is Margaret. I'll be the broadcast engineer for today. Hello, good to see everybody. Real quick, a reminder that we do stream on 3 platforms, who I was just saying hi to right now. We stream on Discord, YouTube, and Twitch. You are welcome to ask questions on any platform. We are here to answer questions, so don't feel shy. Seriously, we live off of questions. Real quick, today we are doing an installing FileMaker Server 2023 on Mac with Jacob Taylor. So that'll be really fun. We did Linux and Windows the last 2 days. People have already asked me where the recordings are. The recordings will be available sometime next week. Takes a while to get through the video recitation fixing process.
So, Mr. Taylor, are you ready to kind of show your screen? So let's cut to doing a FileMaker Server 23 install on the latest version of the Mac operating system, which is Ventura 13.3.1.A. There's some sort of A emergency security patch thingy they did today. So
and we're on it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. There it is right there. So if it dies, let me know. I have to run out of the sound booth and around to where the server's at. Okay. So I'll run really fast. Okay. Yeah.
So that's I mean, this one will be pretty straightforward compared to the other. We'll spend time looking at the admin console and talking through how you might configure this and tune it and that kind of stuff. I actually just did substantially the same installation earlier today, and it is almost, so with the exception of setting up backups and stuff, you want separate drives for that kind of stuff. The Mac install is pretty easy finally. So that was on 19.6 though, not 2023.
All right, so what do we have? Amazon, you already explained everyone what Corretto is, but let's assume someone today is only here because they don't care about Windows or Linux installs, and they have no idea what any of this is.
Cool. So yeah, so I have basically the 4 parts that you will probably want. I'm missing one. I'll talk about that in a minute. But the 4 parts that you'll probably want. So one, obviously you need FileMaker Server installer. In this case, I have FileMaker Server. This is 20, which is 2023. It's the release version, 20.1.1. I pulled a copy of FileMaker Pro just in case we want to, I don't know, have it available. You do need the license certificate, right? That's how you validate your licensing. And then Corretto, addressing that specifically. So as of, what was that, 19.3, I think, or 19.4, they stripped Java out of all of the platforms. They don't give you a Java anymore. On Linux, it brings it in automatically, but Windows and Mac, you have to basically find your own Java. There's 2 main ways to do that. One is actually if you do nothing on the admin console and you try and go turn on, I can show this, but if you go try and turn on the web presentation engine, which is WebDirect, it'll pop up and say, hey, you don't have a Java. You need to like download Adoptium or one of these other ones. And that's fine. There's not, for client purposes, there's no difference between any of them. The reason we pick Amazon Corretto is because Amazon can throw their wonderful billions of dollars of engineering money behind it, and we don't have to care. And it sits there, and it doesn't automatically update itself or any of that kind of stuff. It's just easy to use.
I love Amazon. Every time someone like Claris,
and it's free.
Or not, I love the part of the company that makes data systems and data centers and services. The rest of it,
AWS and stuff. Yeah, they're good. All right, so I'm just going to proceed here. So you double clicked, it mounted our little disk image here on the side, and we're just going to double click the FileMaker Server 20 installer. This package will run something to determine if it can be installed. Fantastic. And for this part, we're mostly just going to click next. We are accepting the the licensing. Don't run FileMaker on your nuclear reactor. Anyway, so we'll proceed. We agree. We're waiting for it. All right, cool. So we're not going to do a secondary machine. This is a primary machine, which is to say FileMaker Server and WebDirect are on the same computer. You can do secondary machines where there's WebDirect only running on other computers that you have to pair up. So, yep, I don't change that. That's just what user is it running on. This is us, so we're going to put our company name in. So the company name, or the organization name, sorry, but company name really for most of our clients, is whatever you put on your paperwork. with either with us or with Claris. So we're going to put our super secure password in. We're going to put a PIN. This PIN code is, oops, let me actually type it correctly here. The PIN code is only used for local, like you have to be on the server like this, where I'm local. You can see I'm on screen share here, but you have to be local on the server, able to open terminal and stuff, to where you might reset your admin console password if you have somehow forgotten it, lost it, etc. That's what that's for. It's the only thing it's used for. So cool. Yep, we're installing it on the main hard drive, and I click install. Oh, and then I have to become administrator. Perfect. What is the min Mac server for 23? Monterey. Or do you mean hardware? The minimum operating system version is you have to be on Monterey or Ventura. This part was pretty quick. This is, I think this one's an M1 install I did earlier was an M2, but these are good for, let me see what model this is. Oh, it's a 16 gig. Nice. Yeah, so you could probably do up to 20 users on this. Because you get 20, maybe 25 if you want to push it, or if the clients don't use too much, not using WebDirect or something, like it's Pro and Go only.
I only buy the M1s or the any of the M or M1 or M2s with 16 gigs. The only 8 gig machine in the entire company is the one that Margaret's got, which she doesn't do too much on. But yeah, you get into this memory swapping thing that'll really impair it. So I always buy the max RAM. So I just got an M2 and I bought it with the 24 gigs of RAM. The SSD is kind of less important because you can always put externals on that. But just remember that whatever you buy a Mac Mini anymore, whatever comes in it is the way it'll be forever and forever. I think all the laptops are that way too from Apple. So the idea of an expansion slot or a card that you can put more stuff in, Apple got rid of that because they don't want people opening up their computers and looking at them. So
yeah, they're basically kind of like kiosk machines now, laptops and desktops. So not really user serviceable. You can plug stuff into USB-C or what stuff like that, but that's it. So all right, so I'm going to do launch. Then my little thing's going to bounce at me and it's going to ask me, oh, software was installed. Thank you. I'm going to keep the installer because I don't need to throw it away. And then, yeah, so we're staring at actually technically a working FileMaker server. It's not configured. we need to do a few other things, but it is otherwise good to go. So I don't want to save it. We're not going to demo installing the SSL today, but we're going to use the default here. But I'll cover part of that in a minute, just to hit it for the Mac users in case you weren't on any of the other 2 streams that we did for this. So, all right, so we have a Mac. It's installed. There's 2 things you're going to always want to do immediately. No, 3. Yeah, 3. First is because the FileMaker server out of the box only has an in-memory record cache of 512 megabytes. If your database is tiny, that's sufficient. If you have more than like 5 users, you should probably change it. And so I'll show boosting that. We'll throw it up to a couple gigs. For the demo, the number doesn't really matter. Just for demo purposes, it doesn't really matter. Tuning is a bigger conversation, but it's just very basically you want to increase it if you have more than, like if your database is a couple gigs, make sure your RAM cache is at least a couple gigs. That sort of conversation. So
yeah, every time it's like having asking people to the recommended settings on that is like like starting a question about a religious war, right? That kind of stuff. It's it's kind of funny. You see that with the data separation model, like, hey, I'm going to separate the data, which people can't really do, but they pretend that they do, and then they pat themselves on the back that it's great, which is fine, and then people get really offended if you have an opinion about that. Well, this one is a funny one because there used to be this formula that it was a less than half, but it was like 40% of whatever your RAM was on the machine. But
it's amount of RAM, take a gig off. So in this one, 16 gigs minus 115, cut it in half.
Then divide by 2. So it's total 6. So it's total RAM minus 1. So 15 divided by 2. So what's that?
7.5.
7.5 gigs would be your. Now that people say that's too much, that's not enough. Then you get somebody like Hans in here, and then Chris Moyer and a couple other people, and they start having a really serious fit about this. And all I'm trying to tell you is I got customers who leave it stock. They don't run backups. And they leave this stock, and then they wonder why FileMaker, after Richard touches it or Jacob touches it, it's so much faster, because we don't leave that default setting is too stupid by quite a bit, too low. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, and so I was like moving away from that old advice, even because, at least I'll just say as an observation, within 19, it seems like the server has gotten more, in some ways, more memory efficient. I don't mean it's using less or something like that, but like you don't need to turn that number up as high as you used to. That advice, half, -1 or whatever, that is amazing for FileMaker Server 18 and basically every previous version I've worked with. 19, it was like, yeah, it's pretty good over time, but like you'd end up with a system where you'd follow that rule and it'd be too much. You'd end up with there's a metric called the cache unsaved. It's kind of what it sounds like, the in-memory cache that has not been saved to the database. And FileMaker Server, you'd end up with too high of values for your cache unsaved, i.e. your data is not moving as fast as you've turned the thing up to. Like it's not. And so I started like reducing it a little bit, just not turning it up that high, very simply. And then Claris launches 20, and we get a new preview feature that is a quick server restart thing. And it's meant to help with crashes. It's meant to be able to bring the files back up again if you have not listened to us and have your automatic database turned on and you turn on this experimental feature. So just to be clear, it's kind of a narrow case, to be honest. But they introduced this feature, and one of the changes as a result of that is that as of 20, and again, with that feature turned on, you have to explicitly enable it currently. It cuts your in-memory cache in half on the server. And so we're back to, if you turn that feature on, we're back to, oh yeah, you should definitely just use half the server's available RAM because whatever that number is you think it is, you're actually only getting half of that. So.
Yeah, so it's tricky and it's aggravating, and there's no set thing. But here's the thing. So if you follow the rules that we have, then you'll stay out of trouble. So one of the rules is you buy enough RAM for your computer, and your FileMaker server doesn't also do 5 other jobs for you, right? It doesn't. Sally's not on there writing a Word file on the server. Also your mail server if you run your own email. It's not also your file server. It's not also your video editing server or whatever you want to do. It's a dedicated box. If it's a dedicated box, then using half the RAM on it is fine, because the other half the RAM goes to the operating system, or it's not used, is the whole idea. But I got people who we ran into someone today who didn't want to buy FileMaker Server, and they had 4 copies of Pro running around doing peer-to-peer sharing. I really wish. Yeah, I don't know how to help people like that, because maybe that's you, yeah. But I tell you, just asking for trouble. So anyway.
Yep. So that was the first thing. Second thing, you always need to configure. Out of the box, FileMaker Server does not have hourly backups. It doesn't have weekly backups. Not all of my customers need, say weekly or monthly checkpoints for their database or something like that. However, for all of the ones that we set up, we turn it on anyway. Good insurance, if nothing else. Hourlies, however, we consider those critical 100% of the time, and you should have it if it's not like a problem. Your database isn't 500 gigabytes or some wild thing. You should have hourly backups, and the reason for that is what lets you minimize data loss when you have a crash, like for real. Because if you have a valid, good, complete, it's unmessed with hourly backup to go back to in case of a crash, that will always be our recommendation and our preference. Like I said, this new quick server restart, crash, put the file back together thing, it's cool. I'm still waiting on technical detail to find out basically how it really works under the hood, so that we can give everyone good advice, whether or not to use it and that sort of stuff. At present, it's off by default, so I don't need to provide advice. You know what you're getting yourself into, or maybe you don't, but you know that you're getting yourself into something if you turn it on. So be careful, but at some point we may have advice on that. Let's see. All right. Quick questions. Is there a test version of FileMaker Server? No, but all versions of FileMaker Server are 45-day trials, just like FileMaker Pro. If you need a test edition of FileMaker Server, which is to say a licensed but tiny version, you're ideally pursuing the FileMaker developer subscription, but I don't know if that actually exists.
They killed that.
Did they kill that?
I think they killed it, unless you can find a
Dang.
link for them to sell it to you. Yeah, it's all part of this. Yeah, you guys watch the live.
They need to bring that back or do something with that, because it's really useful for the, like, again, the citizen developer that they've talked about, the coder that services different clients and stuff. You want to have a FileMaker server, even if it's just for your little development stuff. Next question from NC. They said, I installed FileMaker Server on a Mac M1, 16 gigabytes of RAM. Everything installed fine, sample file works, but when I try to upload my own database, it won't open. That is almost universally exactly one problem, and that is that you have a full access user that doesn't have a password, and you should fix that first. The way that you would confirm that, and I can show you right here, is you're going to go over here. The easiest way, at least, is to go over here to the log viewer. I guess I should point on camera. Go to the log viewer, this tab, select the event log right here, and you're going to go all the way to the bottom. Window's tiny, so you can't see it very well. Sorry about that. Use a bigger monitor on your end. But there will be an error in here that'll say opening file, can't open file because of some security setting. That's what that is, and it means that you have a full access user that does not have a password. You should resolve that. Don't upload databases that have full access users and no password.
There's a question there from David Angel. So David asked a question, 5 users of FileMaker license is not concurrent. Let me just be very clear about that. So it's 5 identified people. That's what it is. And so when you buy a 5-pack, it expects that those 5 people can install it on the computers that they themselves are using. I'm a little bit of an outlier. I said 5 computers in Discord over here, but I've got more like 12. They're spread through 3 different offices. So so if I buy a 5-pack, I'm one of the 5 people. I can install it on my 5 computers. That doesn't mean I invite 20 of my best friends over to share my computers. That's not what it's for. It's for you, so I can use probably 2 or 3 copies, 2 or 3 computers at once. If we're building on one, testing on the Mac, testing on Windows, and then I'm doing like security stuff, I could easily keep 3 computers going. So, but I'm just Richard Carlton, so I'm one of the 5. So concurrency is where it's not attached to the person's name. Now, at the current time, Claris will not say at the 5-pack, give me the 5 names of the 5 people. However, legally per the contract, if they call you and say, we want the names of those 5 people, you have to be able to provide those and know who they are. If you don't know, and you've got 100 people in the corporation and you bought a 5-pack, that's you're playing in the dangerous end of the pool, right? With that, you need to be careful with that. So concurrency is where you legitimately really don't know who they are, or you have maybe there's times when to buy concurrency and times not to buy concurrency. Most people buy user licensing for that. Okay, and but the price is 3 times more expensive for concurrency. So if you want like unlimited, like 5 people, and it doesn't matter who their names are, then the system literally will restrict you to 5 connections for 5 people. And when the 6th person tries to log in, it says, I'm sorry, David Angel, please take your credit card and call Ryan Correa at RCC to get a bigger license, right? It does that. So just keep that in mind.
Quick question from YouTube.
Yes.
On backups, I run 15-minute backups. Is that killing my performance?
Yeah.
How big is it? No, stop. How big is your database? Stop. Is that right, Jacob? Ask how
Yeah.
big is the file?
No, that's what I said before for the hourlies. The implication of backups are not free. You have to pause the database and then write the database out. So, right, if you're running it every 15 minutes and the file's small, no, that may not matter because it may complete in milliseconds to a fistful of seconds or something like that, depending on the size. If the file is large, and it's taking some portion of each of those 15-minute windows to write the backup out, either due to slow disk speed, big database, both, other factors, I don't know, then yeah, it may be affecting your performance. Realistically, if the file's small, probably not actually.
You know how you could tell is that what you do is you set it like real aggressively, and then we call it squeal testing. So what happens is that you run it real aggressively. And like I had a customer used to have spin drives, and the database was like 20 gigs or something. And the thing would sit there and spin. It was FireWire 400 for those you remember what that is. So it's like 20 megabytes a second. So what would end up happening is that they would give this 5, 6, 7 minute coffee break, and it would happen like 3 or 4 times an hour. That it drove them insane. So we went to SSDs, and their backup speed was less than a minute. So then you could run them more frequently, and no one would notice. Also understand, super important, that when the backup runs, it's going to determine which files have changed since the last backup. It's only going to write the files that have changed. This is on Mac and Windows, I'm assuming Linux too. So it will create a directory of everything for you, but it's not going to write a new FMP12 file. It's called hard linking. We could talk about this in another video if you'd like, or in another day. But the idea is that it goes, hey, there's this 10 gigabyte file, but it's 2 a.m. and no one's here. No data has changed. I'm going to mark it that I backed it up, and it's going to make a reference to it. But strictly speaking, it did not write the 10 gigabytes to the backup drive. It found the previous copy, which is still up to date, and it made a reference to it. It's a hard link. So you actually have, imagine a 10 gigabyte file on a drive. Physically, it's on this is called a spinny disk for now. It's buried on a track or spinny disk, but then it's referenced in the directory 3 or 4 or 5 times. If everyone leaves at 5 o'clock in the evening, it runs backups every hour, and then at 6 a.m. the next morning, no one's there yet. How many backups reference that one file? 6, 7, 8, 10 of them. So you could have written 6 or 7 or 8, 10 gigabyte files, but only wrote one, and then it linked to the one because it was up to date. Make sense? It's really a hugely awesome thing they put in this like 10 years ago. Really nice. But most people don't know about that, so you're not getting penalized to run backups in the middle of the night. No.
Yeah. That's correct, all of it. So I want to show one thing really quick. We're going to make a backup schedule here. I want to show creating the hourly. At least so you do that. You should be doing this every single time you set up a server. I have a very occasional client try and refuse or tell me they don't want an hourly backup, and I usually turn it on anyway. There's, I think, maybe one actual client where we didn't do that, and that is because their file is so large it's not reasonable to actually run the backup every hour. So, all right, so I have this like hourly backup schedule set up here. Those of you who are watching, at least in the background, saw what I did. I just created a new one. I left it at the default location. I changed it to keep 24 backups because we want 24 hours, a little rolling window here. I changed, you do it daily. You have different options here, but you do it daily and then you do it between. And so for 24 hours, we go midnight to 11 p.m. basically. Repeat every hour. That sounds great. And we hit save. That's it. You have that backup. I do actually, so going back to the backups conversation, there's a couple, actually, this is good because we have all these on the same page now, so I can just like stare at the screen for a moment. So there's 2 things here that are worth talking about at some length. One is progressive backups. I recommend those now. They log when they run. You can look in the event log and see when the last progressive backup was, and what time that was, and if it completed or not. That's awesome because it means that progressive backups, they're incremental. They run every 5 minutes. And so if you can identify one of those that completed we're talking about a crash restoration scenario here. You've come back into the server, it blew up, whatever, you need to do a backup restoration. So progressives are usable in that scenario now because you can go and look at the log and confirm when the last one that ran was. And so that may, not will, but may give you an alternative to the last hourly, so you don't lose, whatever portion of the hour has passed worth of data. You can get much closer, potentially as low as 5 minutes up to 10 maybe, right? The progressives keep, I think, the last two. Or when it runs, it's like there's two of them in the folder, so you're either 5 minutes old or up to 5 minutes old and then up to 10 minutes old. That's awesome. Especially if you have any kind of a high-speed data system. The second one to talk about is parallel backups. That is a new feature in, what was that, 19.5 maybe, or 19.6 they added that. Basically, parallel backups.
That's another one that, unless you have a real compelling reason to use it, just don't bother, please.
So we did the backup thing. We addressed these. Basically, the way parallel backups work is, and honestly, it's probably best used in a situation where you're like a hosting company, which means you're probably not watching this stream, but happenstance that you are. It will use intelligence from Pro, Go, WebDirect to try and figure out how the files relate to each other without like inspecting database relations or something like that. These are things that are told to the server while it's running. And then it will group up the files. So that, for example, if you have like one customer solution that's like 5 files that relate to each other, you have another customer solution that's like 7 different files, you've got 12 on the server, it's going to pick one of those two and try and run the backup of all of them at the same time. So the 5 set and the 7 set, whatever order it's going to run, and I can't possibly tell you, but it'll pick one and then run one first and then run the other one second. And and the intent and the idea is that you get better data consistency in the backups. It does also help with performance, mostly not so much on cloud servers and stuff like that, because they have like, a defined number of megabytes per second you're paying for, stuff like that. But for example, if you had a screaming on-site server of some kind, NVMe drives, something like that, you may actually just see a performance benefit out of it. Because it can back up the multiple files at the same time. And if you only do one at a time, you may not actually max out the speed of the drive. So, that's the simple version. Third setting, I said that we're going to be 3, that we always change, always, right here on screen. Automatically open databases that are in the folder, you're turning that off every time. Yep, yes, this one right here. Top one, yep, turn it off. Should be disabled. Yeah, correct. So this saves you from situations where the server goes down for whatever that means. This is a Mac, so we're doing that. So maybe, I didn't have a battery backup on it. The power at Richard's house goes out overnight, or something like this. Or we live in California, so
Happens, right?
PG&E turns it off on you because that's why.
They think it's fire season. Yeah, that's right.
Yep, right, exactly. And so they just, your power gets turned off. Thanks, I wasn't paying for that or anything. And you don't know what happened. You may not know what happened. If it's a remote site, you don't have staff on site, whatever. Like we have no idea we may not have any idea what the server, like why it went down. In that situation, you need to be doing incident response every time. And what that means is trying to figure out, 1, why it went down, and 2, specifically identifying what the last good backup is to restore to. The reason we turn that setting off is because it allows you the time to do that. Yes, it is annoying because obviously when it comes back up, it's not going to open the databases again. That means one thing primarily: you are not going to accidentally find yourself in an unsafe situation. You will not be running on top of damaged databases and not know it, because the server will not open the files. It'll go down and it'll stay down until a human comes and helps it, right? So that's the point, because if in fact, for example, I don't know how you do that on a Mac, but it's an easy example on Windows. There are utilities that you can install for your computer to talk to the battery backup system, right? So that your computer knows when the battery is about to run out. It can shut itself down. We don't do that, but like that's possible. There are solutions for that exist. it's a really good example of a situation where the server goes down, it shuts down, stays down. This whole thing happens. It doesn't come back up again when the power returns later. You come in and you look at it and you go, oh, you can look at the log file and you go, oh, hey, the server shut itself down. Like everything, you go look, you say, I see closing files closed, FileMaker Server shuts off, everything happens in advance of the battery actually running out. You can go look at that, say, actually, we can just safely reopen the files. There's nothing wrong with that. And so that may be all that you need to do, but you're going to do that every single time. Anytime you're like, I don't know why this thing went down, I don't know what happened, you have to answer that question, and that'll tell you, are we reopening the files? Are we restoring from backups? If you don't know, you're restoring from backups. Richard is raising his hand.
I'm raising my hand. So doing the executive, listen, if the server fails, it will happen at a time when you're already on a conference call fighting with someone, Claris or someone like that. There's a bunch of stress in there and the blows up in the room. And so I have been there when you go in there and you don't know why it crashed, but you know that you haven't done too much in the last couple hours or maybe a little bit. And I just, instead of triaging it, opposite what Jacob says, I just go to the backup from an hour ago. And I look at it to make sure it looks like I said, like I'll compare the number of files from the current file, like get info on the folder, the directory, get info on the backup. Yeah, they look the same. That's good. So the backup's probably good. I take the old one out of the running area. I zip it to the desktop and I copy. I don't move. I do not move. You do not move. Do not move. Do not move.
Do not move.
Copy.
Do not.
You copy the backup that you want from an hour ago to the live directory. Make sure the permissions are correct if you're on a Mac, and then you fire it up. And so while I don't know why it died, I am back to running. And if I have time in my life to
you can go try and answer the question
later on. So in the event that there's an emergency and you don't have time to triage it, you don't wing it, just go to the backup. And you'll be like, well, I might be missing an invoice. Well, if you keep doing that, you might be missing all the invoices in 6 months. They're all gone, right? So,
the file's corrupted itself, it won't reopen, et cetera, et cetera. We have clients who've done that.
We've had some of our competitors. Some of you probably here watching me secretly, and we got a call from your customer saying that you guys didn't restore from the backup. And the client wants to know why you didn't restore from the backup, and I don't know why either, and their databases are trashed, and they get really mad. Okay?
Yep.
I'm not taking the heat for some of you folks. Jacob got this call in the last week, right? Week or two?
Yeah, it was a little older than that, but yeah. I've had to pilot that client for the one I'm thinking of, at least. Maybe there was another one I've forgotten about now, but
no, this is the one. We're thinking about the same one.
Okay, yeah. It was like last fall. So their file was originally fully damaged at the end of last summer. And it has taken until basically recently to completely restabilize their system. Yeah. So and it's not done. It's at a place where it's okay now. It is damaged. There's damage in the file. I can't remove it. I can't remove it without rebuilding it. And we made the executive decision with all people involved that actually no action is going to be taken. And the reason for that, though, is because they were already in the middle of rebuilding that particular app. And so it was restabilize the solution, get it to a point where it's not crashing all the time, and tell the developer, which is not us actually, but that's working on that new file, to hurry up.
Hurry up
and get that into production so that we can use it, because that file's not damaged. There's nothing wrong with it. So
and the whole reason it happened because the backups, people needed to use the backups, they weren't, and so eventually
Renato has a good question, which I partially addressed previously, but also not, which is, what is persistent cache? That is the thing I talked about during talking about RAM cache at the beginning of the stream. We don't know. That's the short version. They shipped a feature that is intended for the situation where FileMaker Server crashes while running and you don't want to lose data. And so it's off by default, as you see. I didn't change that on stream, and it's that way by default. And so the theory, the idea, and the concept with this feature is that FileMaker Server independently of literally FileMaker Server running, because we're in the situation it's crashed, it will try to put the file back together with the recent changes to your database. If this sounds a lot like the previous startup restoration feature, if you heard anything about that, that's because it is not the same feature, but it echoes that feature because it is intended to solve a similar problem or a similar set of problems.
Which people who don't use backups. They just keep running the live file until it doesn't run anymore.
Yep. And then they email us and ask why their thing won't open. And the answer is because their file's destroyed. So it's not a good place to be, actually. It's very
we're talking about this day like it's a bad thing. If you fix the RAM cache and you don't have your password to be 1234 and you have basic thoughtfulness and you don't have to do everything Jacob says, but kind of loosely listen. If it crashes from the backup, FileMaker Server is extraordinarily reliable and extraordinarily boring, which is the whole point. We're talking about when bad things happen and if your emergency checklist is the engine fails on the airplane, we're not going to attempt to land. We're going to try to keep going because we're in denial. That's how everyone dies. There is emergency procedure. If something bad happens, you've got to follow that. If you don't want to follow it, then you shouldn't be an IT person or involved with IT or anywhere near IT, right? Go wash windows for a living. Do something that not going to kill anyone, right? But FileMaker servers have to be triaged. There's the best way, Jacob doing it. There's the expedient but safe way. I do it. You could choose one of those two. Anything else is dangerous, right? So,
yep. And so this has a small performance hit. Claris told us that. We don't know what small means, just that there is one.
So to be clear, that's a brand new feature. The persistent cache is a brand new feature, and and
it's in preview, so it's beta. That's what that means.
If the persistent cache was really amazing, or this was an AI in here, right? It would go, "Hey, I'm back to life. What's going on? Let me check those files for you." That's what you need, a AI that can like auto Jacob, right? Jacob AI, and it triages and says, "Yeah, this looks sketchy. Let me go to backup for you." That would be freaking awesome. That would be worth.
So I asked them for. Because it's the real version of this feature. That's not what they've shipped here, I don't think. Although maybe we'll find out based on their technical detail that is what they're shipping here. I'm hopeful, but I don't think that's what it is. I asked them for what would essentially be automatic recovery. And I mean that with the capital R, like the thing that you do in Pro. And so like the dream version of that feature of an automatic recovery, there's two things. One, pick and choose restoration of a backup. That would be fantastic. The second one is if you can't do that, or for people that don't listen to us, never heard of us, don't take our advice, etc., right? This group of people, they're kind of being belligerent with their server, not configuring it really. The second and best alternative to that, which is still not good to be clear, but they should ship the feature anyway, is it crashes, it comes back up, it does this thing, and then it actually fully produces a recovered version of the database, like you would do in Pro. Don't know.
Yeah, the problem with recovery, just so everyone knows about that, there's been standing discussion that recovery can, a number of perceptions. We can spend a whole time talking about recovery, but I remember Stephen Blackwell having an absolute coronary. People would use recovery kind of proactively, and it can theoretically do damage to a file, but that was a lot of years ago, and I don't know that's still the case, but to me, the AI should go to the last check to make sure the file that was there is crashed. 2, go to the last good backup for you, and then send you an alarm that it's restored from whatever time, however many hours ago, and some of that data might be missing. That would be amazing. Then you could actually have a FileMaker server that you would just, you don't need Jacob. Screw Jacob. Jacob, you need a new career.
The baller version of that feature would be for it to pick the last hourly backup, take the record, what do you call that? The record cache, and FMDMT the records into the backup and take it
missing
live.
Records.
Basically.
That would take almost an AI level event to do. That would be pretty amazing. That would be pretty.
I don't know if they could ship that. That's like what I just said is wild, but that would be.
What you just said is
that
probably
would be 10 out of 10.
It's probably a $20 million project, and they don't have that kind of budget. So yeah.
And then David Angel. Sorry.
Go ahead. We both have people, so go ahead and hit David.
Okay,
Angel.
I was gonna say David Angel. He asked what's the second one, which is persistent cache sync to disk. So the regular persistent cache, you've only turned the top checkbox on, is in memory only. If you sync it to disk, please be aware that absolutely has a performance implication. It's higher level of reliability per Claris, but it means that you are you're changing stuff in your database, whatever you write, you're modifying records, whatever you're doing. Those have to be written to two places on the server. Writing to two places instead of one place will always be slower, period. There's no way to not have that be true. So it doesn't mean that it's going to be like massively slower, but it will slow it down. Yeah. And you had a second question?
Oh, yes. Code to Go says, I was going to read what he said here. I'm 1 month into rebuilding a file that went through multiple server crashes prior to my period of employment. The file is now corrupting data, manage backups. Yeah, the file is now corrupting data. Yeah, so he says, please manage backups properly, people. Yeah, so Code to Go says, yes, thank you. Don't use crash files, because what's going to happen is that you're going to write, you think you saved yourself time and money, you're going to write a big check for downtime when it goes down and doesn't come back up, and B, to have someone rebuild it, like rebuild the file, like here's a new copy of starting point and rebuild your thing, or just start it from scratch, whatever you're doing. So, yeah, save yourself.
We had an older question. I don't know if we got in the middle of everything. Someone was asking how to adjust cache size and how large should the cache be when RAM is 16.
I didn't demonstrate adjusting it, but we did talk about.
Is that still in the command line? Is that still in the command line?
Only. It's the last thing from 16 that they haven't re-added to the.
I was about to say that they told me that everything from 16 has been added back in.
They said almost everything, and he trailed off, and it's because the RAM cache is the thing that's not there. Yeah. The other one would be the file count limit, which has been upgraded to 256 from 125 or whatever. How many hosted items you can have on a server?
RAM cache, super important. Yes.
Yep.
You understand? Yes. Okay.
Yeah. I know, they're like, we want to hide it from people. I don't want you to hide it from people. That's unless you're going to make it automatic, and then you can tell us to ignore it. But if it's like important for server performance, it should just be on the screen.
Claris doesn't have the budget to make an awesome server that has automatic intelligence. They don't have the funding to do ask for. So it has to be left in manual mode. That was the whole idea why when they went that 16 or 17 server and they got rid of all the stuff in the interface, literally it didn't even allow you to manage the backups. It did everything, but it had no ability to restore or do. It's if you want it to be intelligent, then it has to be like Chat GDP intelligent. Although the other day, I wouldn't trust that Chat GDP. I asked it who Richard Carlton was. It identified me. Then it said I was a certified access developer. And then at that point, I knew it was a wild technical piece of shit. So, yes.
Dang, I'm learning new things.
But, yeah, exactly. You assume it's true because if Chat GDP says it, it must be true, right?
All right. There's one more thing to demo here. I want just so that we have an actual server thing going on. We've answered a ton of questions here. All right, so two things. One, script schedules. There's a new one in 20. I'm going to demo it real quick. Actually, I should do one thing first, which is not demo it. So hold on, stopping, because I need to turn something else on first. So thing we never demoed, web publishing engine, right? We have to install Java to get that done. I'm gonna do that now. So this will, and I'll show you why this is simple. So this is Corretto. It's version 17 for FileMaker Server 20.
Jacob, take your time. Take your time. Don't rush.
Yep. It's Java 17. That's the one that you want. If you pay for Oracle, fantastic. You will have to pay for Oracle. They don't do server licensing for free anymore, which is why that stopped shipping with this product several versions ago. So we have 17. We have Mac OS X. Yep, that's our operating system. And then AArch64 is Amazon's name for the M chips, M1, M2, doesn't matter which. You would use what's AMD 64, Intel 64 for the old Intel processors if you're using like a 2018 mini or something like that. So I'm just going to double click this real quick. We're going to say, okay, we're going to install. Going to put our super secure password in. This will take a couple seconds. That's it. So you're good. we'll keep it. We'll leave it. All right, cool. So that's that. So we can now turn on Web Publishing Engine. This will probably not turn on, which is correct, because it does the detection of Java when you start the server software. So I'm going to do launch CTL stop com.filemaker. Is it filemaker.fms? Am I remembering that correctly? I'm going to laugh if I'm. Yep, cool. I remembered that. Hilarious. All right, so that's completely off. I'm going to do the same thing over again. You can look up this command on the online documentation for it, but this is the Mac specific stop all of FileMaker Server everything command. All the processes go down when you do this. So then I'm going to start them, and that'll take a couple seconds, and there it is. All right, wonderful. So that's back up. Our database is probably not going to be open because we told it to turn it off. Yep, that's correct. 0 of 1, and we shut it down, so we're good to go. So we're going to hit open. Awesome. All right, so the reason I demoed that with the reboot and everything else is because you saw it pop up the dialog asking about Adoptium or something like that, but we're using Corretto. We already have a Java on here, and so we have to kick it back over so that the server detects that there's a Java installed on the system already. When you do that, you'll see what happens next, which is I click the blue thing, and we're going to wait a couple seconds because it takes some boot time the very first time you do it, but our little primary machine unavailable will turn to blue and available here momentarily. So at that point, beautiful. And so then I have WebDirect. We'll turn WebDirect on. Doesn't matter that, we have one demo database here. But the reason I wanted to do that is because I want to demo one thing. So we go over here, we're on scripts. We're going to go to script and verify schedules. There is a new feature in 20. That new feature, which may be relevant to some clients, is a scheduled script that lets you clean up the memory in WebDirect while it's running. It doesn't just, it kind of does it automatically, probably to a certain extent, but at least with I don't know 19.5, definitely 19.6. We've had some kind of memory leak looking problems with WebDirect. It's much faster, much more performant, and we love that. But it's not free. They've maybe written some bugs in there or something like that. I don't know, but some of our clients have had issues with that, and they need the memory to be compacted every so often. So we can create that schedule. There are a few of these, but the main one today is a system script. And so we're going to do collect garbage, and that is what it's called. It's a garbage collection engine. So you do system script, and then you can go up here and you can pick different ones. I mentioned this on it.
That's the 4 that we have right there.
These are the magic ones.
Well, you want the top one. You don't really need the verify probably, but you want the garbage collection ones too.
Yeah, so the ones that we actually set all of them up on the servers. We're not doing 2023 yet, but when we do, at least the run garbage collection one, maybe not on secondary, will be a default setting. The way that we set these up, the purge temp DB, we run that hourly. I don't have good advice from Claris on how often that should be run, only more than once a day. I think it's highly solution dependent, frankly. So it's probably there may not be a good answer. I basically just picked run it every hour and called it a day. I haven't seen ill effects from that, but I also don't know what they'd look like if I found them. So, second one, verify all databases. That is very loud. Can be useful for some clients. It does what it says. It closes all the databases on the server. That's why it's loud. And then manually verifies each of them. You will get a screaming email if you have turned email notifications on. You will get a screaming email if any of those fail, and you should heed that with all due haste, because it means that something has gone wrong in the last however long with your databases, and that's not good, and you should be looking at backup restoration. Third one, and the one I want to demo here, run garbage collection. This is a thing that is targeted at WebDirect, Web Presentation Engine technically, and so if you have XML API or WebDirect is going to be what most people are talking about here. This tells WebDirect to clean up its extra fluffy things that it has going in memory. And so you can do that, hit save. I'm going to leave it at once, but you'd schedule this for, daily at, I don't know, midnight or 8 a.m. or whoever, I don't know. We're probably gonna try it out hourly once we start deploying 2023 servers, and go from there. I asked during the server stream when we had Claris staff on, and they didn't have anything more specific, and I said hourly, and they're like, yeah, that sounds okay. So we'll see. I don't know. It's not likely to be a big or loud thing. Garbage collection's not. It's pretty fast on modern systems. So save. Cool. That's it. I think the only other thing worth demonstrating here was the RAM cache setting, right? That was the other thing that got asked for.
Oh yeah,
so-
can you show that?
Sure. So this server has 16 gigs of RAM, so we'll do the same thing that we did before. We'll say, all right, 16 gigs minus 1 is 15.
Yeah, use our formula.
Yep.
So 16
So you
minus
say-
1 divided by 2.
Divided by 2, so it would be 7.5 gigs of RAM cache, all right? So I'm going to write that command out. So we'll do fms admin, and we're going to set this, and what chunk of the, let me do the, I'll do the get first. I did this on the Linux one because it's useful. So I'm intentionally getting the server config, right? Server config is one of the blocks. There's one for custom web publishing. So I'm going to do that. And we're getting the config, right? So, and this is your admin console credential, not like the Mac login. So we're going to do that. Oh, I typed the wrong password. We're good. No. It's all right. So there's a set of settings. We got the settings. We're looking at them. They've been printed out for us. Some of these are useful, but the one that we're talking about here is the cache size. And you see that defaults to 512. That's 512 megabytes. If you have a database that's significantly larger than that, that's a setting that absolutely should be increased, especially if you have lots of users. So
let's set that at 7,500 is what we're going to do.
Yeah, so I got that. We did a get, and so we're going to do an fms admin set. Same thing, server config. Yes, because that's the chunk. And then what do we want to do? We want to do cache size. We're going to do cache size and equals, and so we're going to do 7.5 gigs, and that is in individual megabytes. So it'll be 7,500. If it's like 4 gigs, it'll be 4,000,
right,
etc. So we'll do that. Same thing. Admin, our wonderful super secure password, and that's it. Done. And that's live. You don't have to reboot it.
Okay. You don't have to
like
reboot that one? It used to be you had to reboot that one, I thought.
So, nope. Okay. Yeah, it takes the RAM live. If I had set up activity monitor and then hit it, you'd see it go whoomp real quick. Just to kind of complete the tour, if you want to turn on the data API, which we do on all of ours at this point, turn it on here. Good to go. Plugins, if you're using server-side plugins very specifically, you have to, especially if it's an FMS, like you're going to do a scheduled script or PSOS, whichever.
PSOS or SAS, either one. Yep.
And so you'll have to at least turn it on there. This is an optional second thing that lets you PSOS with an install plugin script step to install it on the server. We still basically always do manual installs. I still find that easier to deal with, less confusing, and I don't have to write any code and anything else. I drag and drop files in a directory and thump, and it comes back up. And
this brings up a really good point, though. So you can see that we have to turn the plugins on for each of these spots right here, right, everyone? So we're following along here. This is great. However, how many plugins do we actually copy onto the server? Because theoretically, this is one deal, this is another deal, there's another deal. Mm-hmm. Can we install these in one spot, or do we have to install them in more than one spot?
Nope, 3 different places.
So 3 different locations on the, I'm thinking right locations here, on the hard drive over here. So you have to know where those secret spots are. How do we know where those secret spots are at?
I Google it every time because I don't remember either. The only one I've memorized is the FileMaker Server one, because it's in next to the database, or the
open that and show
application.
That. So
yeah, so we'll go here. All right, we don't need apps. We're gonna go. So we're on the boot drive, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna go into library. We're gonna go down here. We're gonna be FileMaker Server. That's the one that we just installed. So if you're doing a FileMaker Server plugin, this is PSOS or SASE, scheduled script server side. Database server, extensions. Nothing in there because we've got no plugins, but this is where you'd put it. It would be, what are they, FMX 64s or whatever is the file name, something like that. So, and you drop it in here, at which point you can restart the FileMaker server. this thing, and it'll show up as like 360 Works email over here, and then you can toggle it on. So if you're doing custom web publishing, you think you go in here, you go to publishing engine, you go to CWPC, and then there's plugins. And so that's web direct location and web presentation engine, which if you're using it will be the XML API, the legacy one. And then I actually don't know where the DAPI one is. I'd have to look it up. Because I think I've done exactly one of those, and it was when Christian Schmidt showed me where to put it when they first introduced plugins for the data API, and we had a Monkey Bread plugin, and he was like, "Yeah, mine works." And so we demoed installing it on
goes everywhere.
Yeah, it runs on everything. But so I've like only done that once. But
yep. So there's 3 of those spots. So if you install it in one place, and then you're wondering why the plugin doesn't show up in WebDirect or something, that would be why. Yeah.
Different separate locations for that. Last 2, ODBC. We have a few clients that use this. Cool. If you need it, you know it, and if you don't, you don't. OData is a newer. It's data API like. It's a REST interface for pulling and pushing data in a super generic format that works across all different kinds of data systems. A big enterprise and industry use OData a little more. Some people find the interface easier to deal with also. So it's in some ways personal preference, and also if you are a person that uses OData in your business, you know what that is, because things other than FileMaker Server support that. It's not FMS specific at all. So most of the rest of this is a little bit of access control stuff. Licensing goes in here. Let's see, we got ours plugged in here. You can change the admin username password. If you do FileMaker admin API stuff, you can use a key instead of a username and password.
That's right. Okay.
I haven't touched that yet, but I think Wim DeCourt wrote up a blog post on how to do that, a little demo.
Seems to me that would be something he would do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's who it was. I remember reading a blog post about it and was like, that's cool, but I haven't had time to play with it. So
yeah.
Final thing, useful, not really next to final thing, super useful. So you may remember we used to, if you're like not on the server, we used to connect to the admin console on port 16,000, right? If you're like, you want to remote into your server and like kick somebody off because they're locking a record or something like that. And so you used to connect to port 16,000. Well, in 19.4, I think they brought everything under HTTPS port 443. That also then causes a second problem, which is now 443 is like allowed through every firewall on the face of the planet. And so then you can just log into the admin console from everywhere. So they added a way to limit based on IP. And so if you're not on the little list, it will block you.
Okay, cool.
And then admin roles. This is one of those features they brought all the way back from 16.
Yeah, I've done training on this, and I removed the training, and so
and now we have to like reshoot it.
You don't have to worry about it. I've trained on this. This is really great if you have one giant FileMaker server and you have different departments in your organization, and you want them to each administer their own little set of files, like their own solution. Okay, but it's really a narrow use case. It was kind of a nice, interesting thing to do, but it made more sense when they did shared hosting. So shared hosting is this idea where a company sets up a server, and then they slices that server to 20 different customers. Well, that's not really legal anymore with the Claris license. They want every customer to have its own server for a wide variety of reasons. Well, this was originally built to help facilitate. So Richard Carlton, have his RCC database, but Code2Go has his database from Apple or whoever, and he has his slice, and we're on the same hardware, but we're in our own little different kind of area in FileMaker Server, right? And so I can back up my files, I can open them, close them, do stuff like that, but Code2Go can't touch mine, I can't touch his, so they have their own credentials and roles and stuff like this in here. So I don't understand the impetus why they went back and added this, because they pulled this out the same time they killed the shared hosting allowable shared hosting service, if that makes sense. So,
I think the only organizations that are technically still allowed to do shared hosting are it's SBA people,
yes.
but vertical market solution. Yeah, we don't need to address that here. There's a very narrow slice of people that
those
can
people
use it.
Wouldn't be allowed to share their stuff anyway. I generally,
yeah,
right? So,
they're legacy anyway, and so it's such a narrow slice. Last thing to look at, external authentication. If you use
we have
Azure, Google, Azure login, Amazon,
except
whatever.
It's sucked. Is it fixed now? Do we think it's fixed? Do we know yet where they fixed it? We had all
I haven't tried it. We are very honestly going to find out if they fix the problem that I reported when 4 goes up. So I don't know. Hopefully.
Yeah, because we were going to use Active Directory. We were rolling it out, but it became such a pain to handle and to deal with.
I'm like the only one that uses it. So that's where you configure that stuff. That's it. Y'all have seen that before if you've seen a FileMaker server set up. And then do play with the new login.
I did that. I did that last week. Sorry, that's covered already. I did that.
Yep.
That was awesome.
This is the new feature in 20. This one specifically. So if you're doing debugging on your server or something like that, you've got some PSOS scheduled.
Everyone here has
scheduled scripts.
They've all seen it. They've all seen it because they watched the show last Thursday. Because I know they did because they were all really good, attentive viewers of our show. All right, so tomorrow is going to be JSON JavaScript Day with Leland Long, right? So feel free to encourage Leland that you love him and that he should come back and spend more time with us. That would be great. Anything else? Code to Go wrote me a book. Admin roles can be useful in managing service situation. I have an ICT department. Not sure what ICT is. That provides a server, but I control the FileMaker server. Admin roles will, once I get things organized, allow me to give ICT the ability to execute pause database command before backing them up. Oh, right. So it can allow the other people to shut down. Oh, that's interesting. Shut down the FileMaker server, pause them. By pausing a database, your database files are essentially in a state that they can be copied. Does that make sense, everyone? We're kind of Code to Go kind of took me off in the weeds, but the idea of pausing the file, it's not just a pause, but it does some checksum stuff, and it kind of essentially closes the file from a layman's perspective. Then you can copy the file, and then when you unpause it, essentially kind of reopens it. Does that make sense? So yeah.
That's useful for describing an enterprise backup situation where you need people that can't touch the files to be able to do things that isn't touching the files, but is, privileged actions over the files, stuff like that. So ICT is like the international name for that.
Oh, it is. Okay. It's IT. Apple calls it IS&T, Information Services and Technology. Everyone's got their little acronym. So it's an IT thing. Okay, never mind. Sorry. All right. That's it, Margaret. We're going to let you take control and run the closer. Goodbye, Cruel World. See you tomorrow. Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir!